The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. How the Obama administration hopes to jumpstart the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, a marriage proposal on Broadway, the real story behind morning TV news, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. The move toward direct peace negotiations between Israel and Palestine is marching along this week, with Secretary of State John Kerry's visit to the area. Ahead of Kerry's visit, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the press, quote, "Our fervent hope is for peace, a genuine peace that can be achieved only through direct negotiations without preconditions. We're ready to enter such negotiations. I hope the Palestinians are too." But are the Palestinians willing to enter direct negotiations? We have little direct word. A multitude of news agencies are quoting off-the-record sources within the administration of Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, with those anonymous claims going in both directions, saying direct peace talks are now possible and that they are not now possible. Abbas has in the past called for a freeze on settlement construction as a precondition to negotiations. The only official word was an interview that Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat gave to Israel's Army radio, in which he said the Palestinians had never demanded preconditions, but said, quote, "If you say no to the 67 border, no to Jerusalem, no to refugees, no to the military, what is there to negotiate with you about?" Meantime, the situation inside the Palestinian Authority grows more complex. The PA's Prime Minister, Rami Hamdallah, announced his resignation this week after only 20 days on the job. Hamdallah shared his reasoning in a post on Twitter in what is probably the most globally relevant statement ever to be written in fewer than 140 characters. Hamdallah wrote, quote, "The situation in this country forced me to resign. Conflicts, confusion, corruption. Palestine needs a real political reform." He signed it RH. Hamdallah's resignation comes not long after the resignation of the man who has been most often credited with the economic resurgence of life in the West Bank under the PA, former Palestinian Prime Minister Salam Fayyad. But time would seem to be on the Palestinian side here. They've recently seen their hand strengthened with their successes at the United Nations and related agencies in being recognized as the State of Palestine over the protest of Israel and the United States. And Israel is seeing continual decreases in international support for its diplomatic position in recent years. But in other Israel news, Chief Rabbi of Israel Yonah Metzger has been arrested on charges of fraud and money laundering, including allegations that he embezzled funds that were supposed to go to nonprofits. Metzger has placed himself on a temporary suspension from most of his duties as Chief Rabbi while the investigation is ongoing. Moving on, marriage proposals have become ever more competitive these days as imaginative and well-rehearsed versions have gone viral on the internet. But if you're going to go for proposal theatrics, why not go directly to the source? That's the approach taken by the groom-to-be in our next story, who co-opted a Broadway play to further his romantic goals, as Meredith Gansman reports.
Who's more Jewish than Cinderella? From shtetl to palace and schmata to sparkle, Cinderella's is a classic tale of rags to riches. And of course she meets that nice guy, Prince Charming, and they all live happily ever after. So what better setting for a Jewish marriage proposal?
Sometimes it's hard to believe that a fairy tale happy ending can come true, but it's Cinderella, and with one romantic, you're about to see that it's all still possible. Things are happening
Sometimes you feel like you're going to lose hope. You feel like it's not going to happen to you. And then, when you're not trying and you least expect it, it just happens.
Real estate broker Jacob Gordon met early education teacher Debbie Seif with a little help from a fairy godmother. The dating website saw you at Sinai, but the match almost wasn't made.
She wasn't on Facebook, and I need to do my research. And I've been on so many crazy dates and so many horror stories that unless I can background check somebody or I can talk to friends or people who know people, I try not to do these things. But anyway, I figured at the end of the day, I was sitting in my chair, she was really cute, so I said, what the hell?
As in any good story, the couple faced some hardships. Soon after they began dating, Gordon's mother suddenly passed away. But despite the limitations of Jewish mourning observances, Seif stood by his side.
I can't go to shows, I can't do movies, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of things now that you can't do that she might have wanted to do otherwise. And she was like really cool. I mean, she stuck around.
And Gordon knew he had found the one.
I hate to sound like all mushy. That was all I wasn't as happy when I was away from her than when I was with her. She's my Cinderella, and she claims I'm her Prince Charming. Since we both met, it was like, the glass slipper. The shoe just fits.
So when he was ready to propose, he wanted to continue the fairy tale and ask his princess to marry him in a way she would never forget. On stage at Cinderella on Broadway. Posing the proposal as a random prize drawing, Debbie was called on stage after the curtain call.
How does it feel to be on a Broadway stage?
I'm a little bit of shock.
Hang on. So here's somebody who would like to give you your gift.
Debbie?
To see more from Cinderella's royal proposal, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally this week, I don't have to tell you anything about the value of television news if you're already watching this, but the story of how and why TV news gets made the way it does at the highest-rated broadcasts is explored by New York Times media reporter Brian Stelter in his new book, Top of the Morning, Inside the Cutthroat World of Morning TV. Stelter stopped by TJC studios for an interview recently, and here are the highlights. This book is about some of the most famous faces in television news. You've got Ann Curry and Matt Lauer and Robin Roberts and Josh Elliott. And what you show is that over the past couple of years, this has been quite the battle royale for some of these famous faces.
It has. The two shows they're on are fiercely competitive, and as a result, the anchors are just as competitive, if not even more so. It's the Today Show on NBC with Matt Lauer for years and years and years. They were winning in the ratings for years and years and years until last year when ABC's Good Morning America beat the Today Show. Robin Roberts, for example, had been trying to do that for a decade and was finally able to do it. And so they take it very personally.
And you got there right as things began to heat up in a way that almost no one had anticipated.
Right.
That
I certainly didn't. I was very lucky. I signed this book deal in 2011, shortly after Ann Curry was promoted to co-host the Today Show. I didn't realize that was going to be a climactic moment in the history of morning TV, because a year later she was pushed off the show, and that kind of helped the show fall from first to second place. It was already beginning to lose, and Ann Curry's demotion kind of cemented that loss for the Today Show. But certainly I wouldn't have predicted, and didn't predict at the time, that Ann Curry being promoted was going to set off this terrible chain of events.
And one of the things this book ties into is a major theme in media reporting broadly, which is that our job in the news business is to relay the facts, is to push for open information and to make as much information as available as possible. But that often when the light is turned or the camera is turned on the producers of the news themselves, that all of a sudden you can find a lot of obfuscation and a lot of obstruction, and these aren't the stories we're interested in sharing.
Right. There's a lot of truth to that. There's a saying sometimes in journalism that journalists should always be on the record, that they should always be willing to be interviewed, since they're in the business of asking others to be interviewed. But that's not always the case in television news. Anchors and producers sometimes are very reluctant to talk about what they do and why they do it. And I ran up against that several times while working on the book. Although I was able to get pretty good access at both shows, Good Morning America and the Today Show. Today pretty much locked the doors after Ann Curry was removed, because they were going through a spate of bad press. They were having a tough time, and they didn't want anybody any more attention on them. And so although I understand that decision, it was frustrating, because these are shows that report on others all the time. And I personally think that media in general, all media outlets, are better when they are reported on. I know I'm better. I know that I'm better at my job because I'm interviewed sometimes, because I'm having to be on the other side of the questions. It's good for me as a reporter.
The Today Show was the mass medium for decades.
Right.
And then it was the Today Show and Good Morning America was the mass medium for the morning for decades. And now, not only the internet, but also, and perhaps especially cable, has produced this stratification where niche audiences can find whatever they want
Yeah.
And you can find, if there are about 1 million of you in America, you've pretty much got a TV program for you somewhere.
That's why the internet is so revolutionary. The fact that anyone can publish is so revolutionary because it creates so many different types of competition. And for the morning shows, not only are there 12 morning shows on cable, as well as the Today Show and Good Morning America on broadcast, there's also apps that'll give you news when you wake up in the morning. There's also radio, of course, that continues to thrive in some ways in the digital age. And I wonder going forward what the effects of the web are going to be on morning TV. If we all wake up with our cell phones in the morning, as more and more of us do, then turning on the TV isn't as natural a thing to do as it used to be, because your cell phone will tell you what happened overnight and tell you what to expect in the morning. Traditionally, that's been the role of morning TV, so these shows are going to have to adapt to that changing landscape, I think.
You can see the full interview with Brian Stelter in the Interviews category under TJC Original Series on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Cable Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and on Comcast in the On Demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.